It's an essential sound of rock, and players from Duane Allman to Jeff Beck to George Harrison all used it to great effect. It's that mixolydian sound. Now, before you click away and think that's too much theory or that's too hard, I'm going to prove today that it's not. It's easy. And even if you only play pentatonic scales, you'll be rocking the mixolydian mode in no time at all. Why learn the mixolydian? Isn't it hard? No, it's easy even if you only know the pentatonic box. But the real reason to learn a little bit about the mixolydian is that it's a true sound of rock. Oh sure, it can be used to get exotic sounds like this. But what about this? It's hard to say that this isn't really rock. Or how about this example from Jeff Beck? Or this from Mick Taylor in the Get Your Ya-Ya's Out version of Sympathy for the Devil. Or what about this one, a staple of the 1970s? What rock guitarist doesn't want to get those sounds? I know I did, but neither the major nor the minor pentatonic scales will get you there. Mixolydian will. But before we talk about what it is, let's talk about when you might want to use it. For that, we're going to use a typical mixolydian progression. Now, this isn't the only one, but you'll see right away that it's a sound of rock in so many different songs. And that's also going to give us a clue to how to play it. Here are a few examples of the progression. I'm sure you'll recognize them. All right, well, if those examples weren't enough to convince you that this is a true sound of rock and roll, I don't know what else to do. If you're still with me, let's take a look at the chord progression because, as usual, the chord progression is going to give us a clue to how to form the mixolydian or how to form this, and it'll give us an understanding that we will never forget and we'll be able to use it more effectively. So here's the chord progression we're going to work with here. This would be like the chord progression in Back in Black or the solo section in Sympathy for the Devil. We start on an E, go to a D, then to an A, and then back to an E. Now the interesting thing about this is like a reverse blues in A, where A would be the 1 chord, D would be the 4 chord, and E would be the 5 chord. But here we're playing the 5 chord first. We start with the E, then go to the D, then go to the A, and back to the E. So you might be tempted to use the A minor pentatonic as your scale for this. The issue with that is that the chord progression begins and ends on E and its lines resolve there. That means that E is the tonal center of this, and you should pick E something as your primary scale to use. All right, so E what? Well, there's a number of choices. The typical choice would be to use E minor pentatonic. That's what Keith used in Sympathy for the Devil. Whereas Mick Taylor used a blend of E major pentatonic and E minor pentatonic. Now the trouble with using E major pentatonic is that it doesn't have that edge that rock and roll usually has, but the mixolydian will add in a little bit of that edge. So if we start with the E major pentatonic, shown here, now all we're going to do is add in 2 notes, and those 2 notes are going to be the roots of the chords in that mixolydian progression, the D and the A. So we'll add those in here, and that's it. Yeah, it's that simple. And I know there's some theory-minded among you who will say, oh, it's the flatted seventh and the fourth, but a lot of people turn off with that, so you don't have to know sevenths and fifths and thirds and all that kind of stuff. It's fine. Just remember, this is a reverse blues. Just add in the root notes of the chords to the reverse blues. Now let's look at a couple of other advantages of using this scale. So here's the E mixolydian in that same position, and you can see that there are a couple of places where you have half steps. Now, one of the advantages of that is you can bend a half step instead of a whole step, and that can give your play a lot more expression or different expression. You hear that in the play of David Gilmour, Gary Moore, Carlos Santana. It can be very emotive. Now, another thing is that because there are 3 notes on some of these strings that you're playing, you can play a little bit faster than you can with the minor pentatonic. Now, I know playing is not all about playing fast, but sometimes it's just kind of fun to do it. All right, let's check out an example using that Sympathy for the Devil, Back in Black chord progression. So there you go. Try out the mixolydian. It can give you sounds that are a little bit different than the usual minor pentatonic sounds. Those are cool, but isn't it cool to have something else in your trick bag too? Hey, and speaking about trying something new, check out this video from my friend Rusty of Rusty's Guitar. He takes that same mixolydian progression, that same rockin' progression, and puts a different spin on it as well. So check out his video and tell him Mark Z sent you. We'll see you on down the road.